Selecting strings for your guitar can be a bit intimidating since there's so many variations out there. But don't worry, we're going to cover a bit of the basics today to help you select the right strings for your guitar. In general, there are three things you need to keep in mind when selecting strings. The first is what type of guitar you have. The second is the thickness of the strings. And the third is the material the strings are made out of. First things first, what type of guitar do you have? Strings are designed differently based on what instrument they're designed for. So for example, putting acoustic guitar strings on an electric probably wouldn't sound as good as strings that are made specifically for electric guitars. On the other hand, a nylon string acoustic guitar and a steel string acoustic guitar have strings that mount differently at the bridge, so they're not interchangeable in that regard. You might hear players refer to their strings saying, I play 10s or I play 12s. What they're talking about is the thickness of the smallest string on the set, and that's called string gauge. More specifically, that number refers to thousandths of an inch, so 10 thousandths of an inch. 10s are about medium or light for an electric set, while 13s are getting pretty heavy. You might also see on string packs the terms light, extra light, medium, heavy. There's no set in stone definitions for these terms, they're just helpful guides to get you a string tension that works for you. And they can vary instrument to instrument. So for example, an electric set of lights might be 9s or 10s, while a light set on acoustics would be 11s or 12s. Now you might be asking yourself, what gauge strings do I need? Luckily, it's all based on personal preference and the situation that you're in. Let's hear from some players that prefer a lighter string and why they do.
For my playing style, I really like to bend, so I like a lot of bending and vibrato, and lighter gauges make it a lot easier for me to actually do those kinds of things.
As a beginner, my hands aren't necessarily calloused over from years of practice yet. Light strings make it easier to press down on and get the sound that I'm looking for.
I do a lot of finger picking, so I prefer a lighter gauge string because they're a lot more responsive.
I have a thing for vintage guitars. This guitar does not have a truss rod, so in this instant, lighter gauge strings put less of a strain on the neck.
For other people I know, heavier gauge strings are a better fit.
For playing acoustic guitar, I prefer heavier strings. I like the extra volume and depth.
I play with a slide, so that requires a higher action. Heavier strings are able to hold that tension, and I definitely stay in tune better.
I'm a heavy strummer, and my action just kept getting higher and higher. So with the thicker strings, I can get lower action because they're stiffer, and I think they sound better.
Personally, I like to do heavy top, low bottoms because I still might bend on the treble strings, but I like my bass strings to be really powerful. And I usually play with a lot of distortion, and I find that heavier strings sound better when I'm distorted. Now, if you're not sure where to start, I usually recommend to get a medium set for your guitar. Most guitars come stock with mediums anyways, and you can always move up or down a gauge based on your playing style and what sounds best to you. String material is also a factor at play. The material of the string can change how the string feels, the tone of the string, as well as the sturdiness of it. So you could have two sets of strings that are the same gauge, but sound completely different based on the material that was used when making the string. For acoustics, the most common string material you'll find is 80-20 bronze, which is just 80% copper, 20% zinc. 80-20 bronze has a pretty bright sound, it's pretty clear, and it's super versatile, so you can use it in a variety of different playing styles. Another popular material for acoustics is phosphor bronze, and it's got a warmer and mellower sound, and you usually find those in the hands of folk players or singer-songwriters. For electric guitars, the most common material you'll find is nickel-plated steel, and that's pretty standard, your average, everyday guitar string. It's super versatile and used in a variety of different genres. Pure steel strings and stainless steel strings have a brighter tone and more output, so they're generally better for genres that have more distortion. Classical guitar strings are normally made of nylon or have a nylon core with various metal wrapped around that core, but fun fact, back in the day, classical strings were made out of parts of animal intestines. When you're choosing classical guitar strings, there's not so much string gauges as there is tension. So a light or moderate tension set is going to be a little bit looser and easier to play, but you might not get the same projection that a higher tension set would get, which is a little bit louder and a little bit more precise. If you want to go a bit deeper into the subject of guitar strings, you might consider the shape of the core and the bass strings. Usually it's round or hexagonal, and that can change the sound and feel of the string. You might also consider the material that's wrapped around the core. It can be round or flattened out, which are called flat wound strings, and are usually used on fretless instruments or for a smoother feel or just a warmer tone overall. Some manufacturers also make coated strings, which just means that their strings have a protective coating to slow down the process of corrosion on the string, making your string sound better longer. This process happens when you sweat on your string or when the string reacts to the moisture in the air. Now, we've covered a few options of different types of strings, but there's so many variations out there that we can't cover them all in this video. But most strings have a lot of great information just on the back of the pack that detail things like their tonal and structural characteristics, so it's definitely worth checking out. When you're done putting the strings on, don't throw that pack away. Put it in your case for when it's time to change strings the next time. It can be hard to remember what strings you bought a month or two ago, and it can be a real lifesaver to have the pack lying around. You'd be surprised at how much you can prolong the life of your strings with just a few simple steps to keep them clean. Before you play, just wash your hands. And then whenever you're done playing, I like to leave a little flannel cloth in my case so I can just wipe the strings down, get any oils or dirt off, and keep my strings playing better longer. Although I have my preferred string choice, I'm always ready to try out something new and experiment. Worst case scenario, I can just go back to my favorite set of strings. So grab some sets, try something out. You never know what you might like. Find the string set that works best for you.